Somebody recently sent me a message with very little context.
Paul, you really need to go to 51.741852, 1.832163 and take a look in the hedge.
So I had a look on Google and I couldn't see anything obvious, so I did some research on the area, packed my bags, got in the car, and well, here I am. I should mention this was a trusted contact. Now little did I realise that this message would lead me down more rabbit holes than I care to admit. So what was in the hedge just there? Why was my contact so sure I should come and visit? And what's any of this got to do with a lost Welsh road here in the Cotswolds in England? So the location here by this hedge, well, it's about 6 miles east of Cirencester, and you'll also note it's very straight road I'm walking along. That's because it is a Roman road. It's Akerman Street and it goes from Cirencester to Bicester and back down to St Albans. Now it curves off to the southeast just ahead of me, but you can see the indentation in the ploughed field just up ahead still remains there after 2,000 years. We have here a milestone on the old OS maps, no doubt marked as a turnpike road as it's marked with Cirencester 6. Nothing new there, but before we get a further mile on, in fact just 400 metres away, we get to 51.741852, 1.832163, where I'm supposed to be looking in the hedge. Okay, so let's cut back to this hedge in a bit, because this was the end of my journey. This was almost a side quest, because the more research I did, well, it kept leading to a road that was less than a mile away, the Welsh Road. This road, now we know it's Welsh Road because it says so on Google Maps, but not only that, it also says that on OS maps. They have around about an 11-mile zigzag route across here, labelled as Welsh Road. So the question now becomes, has this route got anything to do with our mystery stone? And more importantly, why do we have a Welsh road in Gloucester heading down to Wiltshire? So this is Ready Token, a very small hamlet. And back in the day, a bit larger, you'd have had a whole row of houses all along here, possibly with an inn at the end. Now this sits way up on the landscape with a view all around us. Now that inn was reputed to have a tower. Well, they built a tower deliberately so they could see travellers from far and wide, put the food on and sell them a good beverage and meal. Now that sounds a lot like folklore. We don't tend to do folklore on this channel. We want to try and stick to hard facts. So with that in mind, Ready, maybe Brythonic for ford, rid. Token, maybe Saxon. Taken, something which points something out. So way of the ford, that makes good sense because the Roman road here will cross a river about a mile to the east of River Colne, I believe. Now the Brythonic language in this hamlet that still survives today, that could well mean that this route does survive pre-Roman times. I love this already. A Welsh road. It sounds obvious, a road that leads to Wales. That was what I expected, so the first part was to look at all the known 11 or so miles on the map and work out which way they would have continued west. We assume Gloucester, but from Cirencester, how did it get there? Now to do that, it's often worthwhile and enjoyable to have a look on the ground. So here we are now trying to sort of read the landscape and see if you can work out which way this route would have gone. Here is an important juncture. We have ahead of us a huge natural feature in the landscape. We have the River Froome cutting through a huge valley, probably a 100-metre drop all across here, and this route ran perpendicular to it, so it had to cross it. There's 3 possible ways it could have done that, and see if we can work out which and why. Incredibly steep, turned into a zigzag now down this valley side. Now that is a big clue, we'll come to that shortly, but very beautiful in here. So a little footbridge across the ford now, but there's a number of points here where there certainly could have been an old trackway crossing that ford, and as we come out the other side we've got 2 different ways you could go. That looks like a very terraced out route And again, you've got the actual bridle way now that we're going to go up in a minute. So we're almost out of the valley now from the River Froome down below. Now on the map that we have, well, this is Route 1, the southernmost of the three, and I spotted something else which may throw this thing up into the air a little bit. It looks like an old milestone. Look at the route we're on, and there's a milestone. It's like a turnpike milestone, sort of 1750s to 1800s, late as the 1800s, but certainly 1750s. This looks like an old, it looks like it's fallen down somewhat and split in two, perhaps, but it looks cut, it looks squared. We're never going to read it. Bit more research needed now, because this has changed things somewhat. Could this actually be a turnpike road? That would give this route much more substance to it being extremely old. Now Route 2, I'm not going to go and find Route 2 because I'm thinking it's very similar. There's fords marked. Let's go and have a look at Route 3 across this valley, because that does contain something very interesting and may well compete with this route for the favoured route across this valley. So as we sit atop of Route 3 on that map, well, we're at St Mary's Church in Edgeworth. Now, there's a lot of history here, as there are with many old churches, but this one dates back to the 11th century. And here, perhaps most importantly for me, I spotted this on the old OS maps. So this is an old cross. Now you'd think it may be some kind of memorial, and I guess I'd like to think that crosses like this could be part of old routes, like sort of the ancient mariners' route across Dartmoor. I doubt it is, but just take a look. Okay, so this is good. I mean, really good. It's a big tick in one of my little adventures, but that cross out there, well, that dates to, I think, the 15th century. Now, if this old route is Iron Age or has Brythonic language used in some of the places, well, we're going to need some more tangible evidence. Someone once described looking for ancient routes is like looking for the end of a rainbow. Looking on the ground is one thing, clues in the place names and language is another. But with the possibility of the milestone back on Route 1 to the south, well, I cast my eye towards the possibility of turnpike roads. So Route 1 across looks to have been turnpiked in the early 1700s and dispiked in 1814 when a road to the south was used instead. So Route 1 was described by Gloucester history as the Bisley Path, and it was said to be a very old route that joined Cirencester and Gloucester. I've just seen something remarkable through the trees. Come and have a look at this. Let's go back through that gateway. So Route 1 has very steep sides, because I think that gentleman I just referred to, well, he suggested that the steep valley sides were often good because they meant that the bottom of the valley would be hard. This, however, is quite a flat bottom, a long bottom valley, and may have been a lot more marshy. Just here, however, may change that perspective quite somewhat, depending on how old it is, of course. I thought for a second it may be sort of newer concrete slabs, but this is does look very, very early slabs of stone. Maybe 200 or 300 years old, perhaps a lot older, I don't know. Now, one thing I've yet to do today is consider anything Roman, because if we can find something Roman here, then it's highly likely that this route would have been in existence before the Romans arrived. First of all, we've got the Bible, Ivan Margry, and we've got Route 544. Goes a bit further south than what we want, but he does mention in it the Bisley Way, and he does talk about it's not well known where this route went, but would likely have been used to serve the Roman villas that were all across here. That's great. And we also have one more thing in this book by Copeland, Akerman Street. Well, we do know that there's a small section that the Romans did use which joined Foss Way to Akerman Street. So we have the Welsh Way, this route mentioned not only by Margry but also by Copeland. That's great. So before we summarise all this, let's go take a look at that stone. So So I've alluded a couple of times now that in that hedge at the start of the video was indeed a stone, but not just any stone. You see, the old maps, well, they referred to it as stepping stone, and after some significant hedge diving we did find an absolutely monumental stone, and it did indeed have some steps, albeit very high ones. So no real context to its exact location, but maybe this could actually help. So let's conclude what we have. Number one, a very curious random stone here. Looks like a milestone, but it's not, because there's one about 200 yards that way. And yeah, it's got clear cut steps. So the only thing I can think is it was maybe like a horse mounting block. We're not far at all from Ready Token, so maybe this has found its way here. Slightly off of the Welsh Way, but not far at all. So maybe this is a clue in that journey. Number two, a Welsh Way, a route with Brythonic surviving names all the way across it, indicating it's likely Iron Age or older past. Maybe it has a drover's route down to Fairford or the Thames at least. 3. Roman usage on the west of Cirencester, and 4. More modern turnpikes. Now it's likely that the more modern industrial towns like Stroud and their mills grew from the 1800s. The drovers' routes became far less important, the farmsteads of small villages all playing second fiddle to the machine that was the Industrial Revolution. And now we're left with the mysteries of this route, the Welsh Way. Heading up the hill now back towards Ready Token, just one of the many hamlets and villages along this route. If you dug deeper into the history of those, well, perhaps you could piece this puzzle together even further, but we are pretty sure it would have connected the farms and the farmsteads of South Wales, perhaps down to London. If that is perhaps a stretch too far for you, then maybe just from the heads of the River Severn down to Lechlade and Fairford, where the first navigable parts of the River Thames were to take your drove of sheep or cattle or whatever it be. Now, if you like this sort of tale, the old routes that travel across this country, you're going to love the old slow coach. Click here to watch that one right now.